Hello everybody and welcome to another video in the 100% full marks exam answers series where we take real students, their real exam answers, they've got full marks in real exams and we break down what they did that is so amazing. We're continuing to look at the work of Jack and his AQA English Language Paper 2 Question 5 answer. We're going to look at a specific part of the mark scheme today, one to do with vocabulary. So when you look at the mark scheme for Paper 2 Question 5, we see that in the upper level 4, so that's not just the highest level, but the highest part, in other words, if you're looking to get full marks, there's this distinction of extensive and ambitious vocabulary. Now obviously vocabulary is to do with the words that you choose. Your vocabulary choices should always be deliberate and we should be looking to show off our vocabulary to the examiner. But I think there's a distinction between extensive and ambitious, and that's what I want to look at with the example of a couple of sentences from Jack's work. I think extensive vocabulary is ultimately saying, look, I have a wide vocabulary. I know and can use accurately lots of different words. And you have to be careful with this. We saw in the 2018 examiner's report, many students try to use big words and then use them incorrectly out of context, get them, completely wrong. So it's not something that we can fake, I don't think, an extensive vocabulary. The good news is when I put this video out, there's plenty of time to work on your vocabulary through reading higher ability works of literature. So you can go to the library, you can say to the librarian, look, I'm trying to read some books that will extend my vocabulary, what can you point me to? The next part, though, is ambitious vocabulary. So what's the difference? I think an extensive vocabulary is somebody who knows lots of words and uses them in their writing. An ambitious vocabulary is perhaps where you're using specific words for effect, where you are actually choosing words for the specific effect that they have. And I think we see both in the work of Jack, so let's take a look at it. If you remember from last week, and this is a continuation of last week's video, so make sure you watch that one, Jack is writing about corruption in sport. And I just want to look at these two sentences. And as always, there are lots of good things happening here. I'm not going to analyze every single skill that's shown. I want to just talk about a couple of things, but put a comment in the comment section about what else is good about this part of the answer. The clearly colossal amount of corruption and greed that plagues sporting communities today is evidently the root of our nationwide inability and incompetence in sport. As mentioned previously, we used to crush our international opponents in a plethora of sports. Now we are being ruthlessly defeated in sports by countries who we introduced such sports to. Okay, so there's the part of the answer that I want to look at, two sentences, and thinking just specifically about the vocabulary. So let's first think about, well, where's the evidence of the extensive vocabulary, the idea that Jack has a wide vocabulary and is able to use lots of different words. I would say words like colossal, incompetence, ruthlessly. Those are examples of the extensive vocabulary perhaps that Jack has. And of course, as I say, that's not something that you can kind of blag your way into. You either have that wide vocabulary or you're growing your vocabulary through your reading, or you don't. But what about the idea of the ambitious vocabulary? Now, one of the things I love about any sort of persuasive writing or any kind of explaining your point of view, trying to impress your point of view on someone else, is the idea of using emotive vocabulary. So if you want something to sound really good, you use lots of positive emotive vocabulary. If you want something to sound really bad, you use lots of negative emotive vocabulary. And there are great examples of that. I think the word plagues is a great example of emotive vocabulary. Plethora, which means a kind of excessive, overwhelming amount, is a great example of emotive vocabulary. So if we just break down that first sentence, the clearly colossal amount of corruption and greed that plagues sporting communities today. Now, let's just think about that. So what is Jack saying? He's saying, look, there's a lot of corruption in sport and it ruins sporting communities. So why didn't he just write, the large amount of corruption that ruins sporting communities? Why use the word plagues? Because it is a great example of emotive vocabulary. It has such a strong connotation. What do we mean by plagues? Well, in terms of the noun, we think of this kind of contagious disease, don't we? We think of like an unusually large number of insects or animals infesting a place. In terms of a verb, and of course, when this word is being used as a verb, we still think of the connotations of the noun. That's what's so interesting about language choice. We mean to cause continual trouble or distress. We mean to harass or pester somebody. Really, really kind of emotive vocabulary. So I guess what I'm saying is this: the extensive and ambitious vocabulary, you need to think clearly about your language choices. Now, I don't know the process Jack went through here, but he might have had this idea in his mind. Okay, I'm going to say something about the large amount of corruption ruining sporting communities. And then he might think, okay, rather than large, let's use this word colossal, because it's an impressive word and we've got the alliteration of clearly colossal corruption. There's lots of things going on there. Rather than ruins, let's use a better word, plagues. That's emotive. It's got so much of a negative connotation that it's really going to kind of impress upon the reader just how bad this situation is. So you can start with a fairly simple idea or sentence in your head, and before you even write it down, you can think your way through it and think, okay, can I change some of these fairly prosaic kind of basic words for something more sophisticated? And here's the key thing, can I use an emotive vocabulary? If I'm trying to impress upon my reader just how bad something is, can I use really negative emotive vocabulary that'll hammer that point home? If I'm trying to impress upon someone how good something is, can I use really positive imagery and language and emotive vocabulary to impress how good it is? So I hope you found this video useful, guys. What a great piece of work. Please do check out my revision guide. It's in paperback, £6.99 on Amazon, and subscribe to the channel.